we've been talking about your art lately, and you were talking about legacy, and I just wasn't really sure what you meant by legacy, and then maybe, yeah, I guess I wasn't, I mean, I know in a way what legacy means, of course, and how it relates to death, but what is it to you?
So the legacy thing, like I said, it has a lot to do with art, but at the same time not. Because, I mean, it just goes to the conversation we've been having about mortality, and, like, my just thoughts about that. So, what were we going to say?
Well, I was going to say, is it related, and this is maybe stupid, it just occurred to me a second, but related to not deciding that you won't have children, or almost positively won't be, and so then this is a way to have your legacy.
Yeah, so, yeah, and that's something that I brought up too, so I'm glad you kind of brought it up as well, because like, conversations are what really bring a lot of these things out. Like, sometimes when I'm writing, if I get inspired enough to start something, with the way that I'm writing things now, which is just like stream of conscious, like almost journal writing, it's not about trying to make it like structured or with similes or with these metaphors and make it very artistic or poetic, like some of that's natural to me and whatever, but a lot will happen. If I can start, then I end up in a different place sometimes than I thought, or like I work out an idea just naturally, and conversations have always done that for me, so I'm glad that we're having it. Maybe I'll move that so I won't fall over again. But yeah, so the children thing, so I'm fairly sure that I don't want kids, like as certain as I can be at this moment. So earlier in like life, like as a late teen, especially as like an early adult, like when I wasn't thinking about, I was never like, oh, I'm gonna have kids, it's gonna be my goal in life. But I was conscious of like, oh yeah, like when I have kids, like I'll pass down these books and like I'll be a good dad and like whatever else. Like I thought about like, oh, this is what I would do differently for my kids when I was like a teenager. I'm like, this is not a good time that I'm having. And yeah, so I thought about it just kind of like as an extension of like, this is my situation and I don't like it, so I wouldn't create the same situation for someone else, and like, this is what I would do differently as a parent, and just, yeah. So I thought about that, and then as an adult, like early 20s and stuff, I wasn't, again, I never thought about like kids, that's the goal. It was just this automatic thing within our culture and people around me that like, at a certain point you get married and then you have kids and that's, you go to family and there you go. Like that's what everyone does. So part of me was like thinking about, at that point even, about when I was doing a lot of writing in high school and stuff, or after that, I really like physical things and always have, even in my teens, like this digital era was starting to shift into that, and I had no idea obviously as to what it would turn into and the way it is now, but I always thought like these books, and then I have like these books of writing and stuff, and like my kids or their grandkids are gonna like find it, and so I want to keep them because it's not just for me, is what I always thought, like it's not just for me, like someone else is gonna get something from this, and that I guess gave me some comfort, or like purpose in a way too, because it wasn't just for me. And I was talking with someone the other day about this actually, because I was thinking like about why do I express stuff, and connection, and trying to feel that connection and stuff like that, which I want to address at some other time more in depth about like expressing and the need for connection. But that I did post my things really early on because I found a poetry forum when I was in high school, and I started writing in about grade 8, and for me that was high school, started in grade 7. So we had computers there at the school. I did not have a computer at home until I bought my own at university, but I would stay after school all the time and go on this poetry forum. So even when writing was my art, I was sharing it immediately. It was never just for me, ever. So, I mean, maybe for the first like month or two that I started writing, and then I found this poetry forum. And I don't remember, so I highly doubt anyone that sees this. There's only one person I can think of, because there's only one person that I kept in contact with. And I don't remember if it was called Black Days, and then it was called The Art of Decay. I don't remember which one came first, because the name changed at some point. But it'd be funny if someone else knew about it. So I was posting on there like really quickly after I started writing. I'm fairly sure it was within the first couple of months. So every once in a while I'd write something for someone specific, and I would give that to that person. More often than not, it was just for me, but I mean, in the same way that art is for me, well, that's not true, because like, I don't sell writing, I sell art, so, yeah, it's just never been just for me, I guess, is the thing. Like, I think maybe initially just started that way because I had to do an assignment one day, and I was like, oh, I kind of like doing that poem, maybe I'll try one, and then I felt inspired or needed to write about something, and then it just came together and clicked, and I just kept doing it, and then I started posting it.
Probably though, it sounds like, to me with what you're saying, is if you could sell your poetry, you would, or at least there isn't any difference from sharing your writing than from sharing your art. So writing was your first thing, and you shared it right away.
Yeah.
Which is unique, I think, but maybe it's just because it's so different than me, because I'm always scared to share all my stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it's really cool that you do that, like that even from the very beginning, that's what you want to do. It's like, so you've always had an idea of legacy then, even before you were thinking kids, because you always had this idea that I need to share my writing because it's important.
I don't know if it was because it was important. I think at first, just through the poetry forum, it was, I think that's where it goes into that connection piece and wanting, for sure it does.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't because it was important, or it wasn't because it was like good, and it wasn't for praise, and it wasn't because I was trying to sell it, or anything like that. It was, so in that, there's a big separation, I guess, of the visual art, also because I wasn't doing visual art until like 10 years later or something if I started writing when I was 14, yeah, I probably didn't start selling any work or doing work for that purpose until maybe like 21-ish, I think, like 2006-ish. So I think it was that need for connection. I don't remember what forums I found first, but then I found this poetry one. It was the only one I was on, and like, it was just that need for connection. The other forums were just to talk about music or talk about this or learn about this or whatever, but this was sharing. I think I've always shared more than I've taken in when it comes to like individuals around me or things like that, or like local people or whatever. Because on the forum, I would read other people's poetry, but sometimes I'm like, yeah, this sucks. Like, and like reading it didn't necessarily inspire me or make me feel whatever. Like, I read some of it from time to time, but mostly I was just posting it. So there was that connection piece there, and it wasn't.
Not really, because if you weren't giving anyone anything back, then you're not really connecting with them. You're wanting them to connect with you.
I don't see a difference. If they're connecting with me, we're connected. If I initiate a conversation with you, or you initiate with me, it doesn't matter once we're talking, because we're talking now.
If you give something back once you're talking.
Yeah.
If you don't, well, the way you said it sounded like you were just posting and you weren't really conversing with anyone else. You were just letting yours be talked about.
No, I mean, like, I did comment on people's stuff sometimes, because sometimes it was criticism, like constructive criticism, or just sometimes it wasn't criticism, it was just like, it was praise, it was like, I really like this, or like that line, or like, I never talked to anyone and like concerned about them. That was also like a forum, I mean, there was more than poetry there, but it was like the main focus. But there was like threads about self-harm, and there was like, it was very, well, I mean, just with the titles, like Black Days or Art of Decay, like, I don't know, there was just a lot, I just happened to find the right thing, I think, for me at the time, too, with what I was going through in high school and how I was acting and things I was doing, and that was a good space, but probably perpetuated some of that too, which I don't necessarily regret. But, I don't know, I still felt like that connection, even if someone is commenting on my stuff, it wasn't always like, oh, this is amazing, and I just needed my ego stroked. Like, it was nice to have, some of it was like academic, like being like, this line doesn't really hit it for me, or being like, oh wow, like I feel the same.
But it's still someone interacting with your
yeah.
art. So to me, then that's different than the need to connect. I guess you're connecting, but you're not necessarily, I don't know. Like
if we talk about it like visual art though, there's this thing that I hate, that I'm very aware, like, well, I hate part of it, and that's that, okay, we have an exhibition, we put it up, and then we walk away, and now it's the audience's. Part of me hates that, because sometimes, and maybe it's just because I have this horrible association from the university where there were times where people interpreted what I was doing so wrong, and they made me aware of it because they would have left a note, And I was like, why don't you just read the artist statement? Like, I would rather have a conversation because I can correct you, I can tell you what I meant, and you can tell me what you meant, and I might find that really cool. Or, I mean, obviously there's times where I want people to connect with the art, and it has nothing to do with, like, I don't have a statement beside every art piece. Like, there's a title that can guide a viewer, and sometimes, whatever, they reach their own interpretation no matter what, because they bring a personal history to it. And that's what I love about it, but at the same time, I don't, like, I guess a lot of it is just the words we use too, but like, there's a conversation happening with the audience, even though there's no give and take back. I give it, they take it, and maybe that's always where it stops, unless someone comments on social media, or if it's at an opening and they see me in person and then we can talk about it a bit, or something like that. It still is a conversation. I don't necessarily find it a one-way conversation either, because they're not giving something back to me, but they're giving something back to the piece internally because they're responding to it and they're thinking about it and it makes them feel a certain way.
I get that, but I'm saying it's maybe not as much of a connection at that point with the piece you're talking about, is not necessarily connection in the traditional sense, because connection in traditional sense means going back and forth. And in a way, you're not really talking about that.
I completely, yeah, and I guess this is helping me understand that too. So like, connection for me is really important in all of these different ways. I have control over this, okay, so I guess we'll address the traditional connection part. Like, yeah, no, traditionally, like, this is connecting, we're exchanging.
Right.
And that's really important to me too, because, well, there could be a million reasons why, but being an only child for like forever, for a long time, like my half-sister wasn't born until I was about 13. So, and my mom was a single mother for the majority of those years, from when I was like 4 until about 11. So she was working and stuff, so I don't know, I got really used to it. I was really independent really early, and looking back, I really liked that. When other people, and they talk about their siblings or their whatever, like, I'm curious as to what that would have been like. It's kind of like instant friends in a way, and so I miss that. I don't really feel like I have that, or have that relationship now with my sister or half-sister, half-sisters, I guess. Or just like the extended family, I don't have that stuff either. So like, I think connection for me has been something early on I've always wanted. I think I would choose the word connection rather than attention, because I don't think I really acted out to get attention ever. I'm sure that I did, but it wasn't like a conscious thing that I can look back on even now reflectively and say, oh yeah, that's totally what I was doing. I just don't think I was. But, so there's this connection where you can generally have with a person, but they need to be a part of it willingly. Like, to exchange back in a positive way, right?
Of course.
So that I like that, that's important to me. I strive for that all the time, and sometimes it's negative coping mechanisms when I get involved with somebody in a certain way, and I can exploit that connection because I'm getting what I want, it's very selfish or whatever. There's that part, but then there's the part that I'm talking about with like putting work out there. I still feel as long as someone is reading it, I don't even have to know I want to know that they're reading it. I want to know that they're looking at it, that they're taking it in, yes. But that could be through, I mean, like right now, it could be things like analytics, how many people watch this for how long or whatever. I prefer to have people comment because I want to create a conversation if I can. Because I love to have conversation. Like, that's a meaningful conversation, not just like a stupid, ignorant argument or something like that where you can't get through. It's an open thing. But to me, that's connection too, is like, I reached somebody. I connected. And I know you're saying like, I didn't connect with them. I still feel that way. And I guess that it is way more one-sided. I've always been open to the person responding back and having a conversation if I felt it worthwhile. But from those days of writing early on, I still felt like someone else read it, and that was enough. Is that they got that piece of me, and that I connected with them for those few seconds or minutes or what have you. And that, like, for some people, it's almost like this weird bond was formed, and only one person from that poetry forum. I don't remember how it happened, because that poetry forum, I think I was only on there for a couple of years, and like, I might have logged in, I remember like maybe a year or something I went by and I wasn't using it, and then I logged in just to see what was happening. And I don't even think it exists anymore. I haven't tried. I think the last time I tried, I couldn't find it, and it makes me want to try right now. But I don't remember how, but somehow, because I was not on Facebook during that time, It was years later that I was on Facebook, but somehow one of us found the other, and it was like, holy smokes, like, I remember that. And there's this weird little bond of, like, the being on that forum. I can't recall how many times I read her work or that she read mine. I don't remember any of that, but it was just like this small little community online, and then now there's that weird little bond there. And that doesn't happen to me often. It's usually just enough to be like someone's connecting with the work. And I don't like always saying work, but I mean, like, if it was just someone's, like, it was my expression, and somebody got to witness it, and then whatever happened from there I have no control of, which sometimes, like I said, is upsetting, because I don't want to be misinterpreted, but I still want to be felt. Does that make more sense now? Like, when I say the word connection?
No, and I understand that. I guess I think you are fairly aware of lots of times when the connections are selfish. And that's what I'm talking about. Because I'm talking about, you want a connection at a certain, like, you want it. You recognize it when it's out there, it's out there. I'm talking about when you do have interactions. Then it seems like, well, you didn't really read other people's stuff. Or people, if they had comments and they were dumb, then you didn't care.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, you're not really having these conversations or maybe even connections in a way. Or at least, that's where I keep saying maybe in the traditional sense, because you don't really care, it seems like, from what I've seen. If someone's like, then there's dumb about your work and they don't know about it, right? Like, and
most of the
that's the part I'm talking about, is this connection and how it's one-sided, because in a way, you want someone to read your work, you want someone to connect with your work, you don't necessarily care how. So that's interesting.
I prefer having the conversation. That's the ultimate, is if someone asks me questions, because if you ask me questions, I get to respond, and responding is expression, and I just love expressing all the time. So through physical exchanges, through verbal ones, through writing, through art, I just want to express. So it is super selfish and like self-serving and whatever else. I learn a lot from like conversations with you. I learn a lot in this conversation, or other, just like having coffee with someone. Like, I learn a lot from conversations where I'm talking with someone who I like, who's a friend, who is artistic, or maybe I just met them, but like we get on a roll and it's a great conversation. Like the fact, like you brought up that, like, well, it's not really connection because you don't care what they think. I care what people think if they say something that makes sense to me. Like, I can be very dismissive.
That's what I'm saying, though.
No,
yeah.
I'll be very dismissive, but I still think, no matter what, if I hear you, for that 1 second, I'm like, no, this is dumb. But I still heard it, and I might reflect on it later, maybe subconsciously or maybe
but
not.
now you've left them. You've had that comment and you've left, and it's fine, they had their comment, you don't really. See, you still like don't really care. It's like, you'll care about it if it was something or made you think, or even if it was just a thing, then at least you interacted. But you're still saying all of this from your side. You're not saying, well, but this person maybe needed to talk about it, blah, blah, blah. And so your work maybe started a completely different conversation that now isn't about your work. It's about something else. Well, then you're not interested in those conversations.
What do you mean? Like, if it doesnn't have to be about, like, that might be a starting point, or like any conversation. It's not like I only talk about my stuff. It just, a conversation would happen naturally somewhere, and then I'm confused now. Like, I don't. If you're saying like, oh, well, then it's not a connection anymore because you don't care about what they have to say. It depends on the person. Like, I can be really dismissive with anybody, including you. I can be, but I mean, also anything that somebody says, if it's still heard by my ears, then like, I can choose whether to not think about it more or not. Basically, I don't think it's a secret that I don't believe in. I had a line once that I wrote that was, altruism is suicide. I don't believe in altruism. I don't really believe, like, I think that's like the most altruistic act you could have. Like, but, so, if I care about the individual, then I invest more time into their needs. But it's your needs become my needs, right? If I don't care about it, your needs are not my needs. I don't care at all. Like, but meeting your needs means that I'm getting something out of it too, because then I know that, oh, you're safe, or you're feeling happy, or you're good, or whatever. Then if I could be a part of that, I get something back from that. So like that's not a secret for me where like I don't want to go out of my way to entertain or babysit or placate anybody. I don't like it. It has to happen every once in a while. It's just necessary.
I do know all those things about you, and I get that. And maybe where I'm steering this conversation at this moment is not right. It just, when I was hearing you talk about it and hearing you talk about connection so much, to me, in a way, I don't know if it's the traditional idea of connection, because really, you're putting your work, and this is where it comes into legacy, because legacy, we're not actually going to know how people interpret our work in the future.
Yeah.
And so with legacy, it's something you do put out there without any expectation of getting anything back, because you'll never know when it comes to the point where it's legacy. So, I mean, in a way, I guess you already do that by posting things, or like I've always admired it. Like you put things out there like right away. Like I'm like terrified and put one out and whatever. Like you're just like, no, I'm gonna put it out there, and so you're opening it up to anything, right? Like sort of any conversation to be had. So, but it just seems to me that in a way, the connection sometimes would be stronger or matters to you more than other times, which I guess is natural.
Yeah, well, I mean...
And just how you talked about the writing in the beginning.
Yeah.
So when you first started talking about it, it did, and you said it's really important in connection, and I know that's something that's important in your work and in your life. But I'm just saying, I think the start of some of those weren't necessarily about connection. Well, they're about connection, but only if they basically kind of want to talk about your work back, right?
Well, even if they didn't, I still felt accomplished because I could see maybe how many times it was read. And I got excited when someone replied and be like, oh yes, like there's 2 replies in this post.
So that is a connection to you?
That is.
Okay.
Even if I don't respond back. And while you were talking, I was just thinking about like multiple things, but one of them being, if there was a platform that, let's say MySpace, like who goes on MySpace anymore? Like I had a MySpace account very, very briefly, and it was for music purposes that I was trying to do something with, and then never really did, and it was super cringy. But I didn't really use that like a lot of people used it. Like a lot, I just didn't really. It was probably already on its way out a little bit, or just the friends I had weren't using it that much. So like, I would never want to post something on there. So if that was the only platform for me to use, I just wouldn't be using it. But then, like I don't create writing for other people, I don't create art for other people unless it's like a commission or something. But I mean, I do it because I feel the need to express. But I get, like, it extends beyond that because, like, I don't think the camera can see all those pieces over there, but there's all this finished work over there just sitting there and it's doing nothing. And like, I got something out of making it in that moment, and I needed to do it, so I did it. And it was great. I don't want them to sit there, not just because it's kind of like, I spent money on this canvas and whatever, and I could make money off it. Like, people have been buying my stuff for like 10-ish years. It's hit and miss and whatever. It's not, but I mean, I want someone to have it for the other reason too, which is why I fluctuate on price sometimes. Because like, if someone really loves this piece, I want them to have it, and I might barely break even or not break even depending on how long it's been sitting there. I can't even tell anymore. I would rather someone connect with it, someone that actually appreciates it. So I still feel like I am connecting because that is in their home now. And I've thought like, what, in 20 years maybe it's going to end up in an antique store for $2, right? Like, or who knows what's going to happen with it, or it'll end up in the dumpster, or like, I don't know. So that sucks to think about because I want it to be something that's special and gets handed down and down and down. But like, I lost my other train of thought, the thing I was thinking of. I guess the thing about the platform, like, yes, I make stuff for me, but if there wasn't a way to put it out there, I wonder just like, what would I do with it? If nobody bought a painting of mine ever, would I be sitting here with hundreds of paintings? Or would I have stopped at some point? I don't know. Like, writing is way more personal in a way. Like, I can't express necessarily the same thoughts that I write about in paint. Like, no matter what, they're not going to be exactly the same. I could title them the same and feel exactly the same way, but just the act of those two different activities are so different that they'll be expressed differently. But like, I think I could write forever, even though there was gaps of time I didn't because I was so focused on visual art. I stopped writing, and now I'm trying to do both and focus on that. But I don't know. Writing is something that I think for most people, you don't think of sharing it. A lot of people don't, like journal writing or whatever. But to me, it's an extension of my life, which is so closely tied to art. It's on my mind constantly. Part of that is fueled by work, like teaching art definitely is why it's on my mind more so if I was just like, I'm going to Maple Leaf now, doing shipping and receiving. Then again, I would think about it all the time there too, because I had time to think about it.
Yeah.
I'm on autopilot, so like, and alone, basically working the whole day. So I just think about it constantly, and I mean, I think of so many things as art that it's on my mind all the time. So I just don't know what I would do without those platforms of share, and if I would stop, if it would be different. Like, I don't know at this point, because it didn't start because I needed to put it for people to see. It started because I needed to do it for myself. And really quickly, almost like I said, within a month or two, I think, of starting to write, I found this forum, and then it just became natural to do it.
Well, I think it's a really interesting question when you say, if you had all these paintings and so none ever sold, and so they just kept piling up, you got 100 paintings, would you keep painting? That's it's just like a really interesting question. Although, I mean, Van Gogh, although he went mad and whatever, or he was dealing with mental illness, but what I mean is he did painting after painting and nothing sold till 200 years later, right? Like no one bought his stuff. So I think if you are going to paint, you're going to paint. But I mean, you do actively put yours out there, and we live in an age of social media, so it's so much easier.
Yeah.
You know, my work now is documented so much better than it ever was before.
Yeah.
So, but.
Well, and I'd like to think that I would keep making it because the purpose that I started making it was for me, and like I said, I still do it for me. Unless it's a commission, no one's telling me what to do. I do it because I want to do it, and that's it.
I think for me, I guess the reason I say with connection, when I was first listening to your connection, but I really like hearing how you described it. But with me, that's why I think, and almost all my pieces or all my exhibitions, there's a performance piece, because I want to still keep interacting with people the entire show. So obviously I can't the whole show, but there's still little bits, because it is important for me to find out for them, like what's going on. So I think it's weird, because I don't want to put it out there in any public way very much, and yet when it's in the public live, then I like being there as much as I can.
It's super funny because I feel very much the opposite.
Yeah.
And that's why it's good to have this conversation. Because the connection thing, like, I'd like to be one step removed. So like,
yeah.
Because if you want to perform, interact with someone, or if we go back to like, what's the name of the piece? Yoko Ono was like super famous.
Oh, Cut.
Yeah, like that's kind of a one-sided interaction too, but in a way not. I mean, it's like giving yourself to that audience and they get to do whatever, and you already made the promise not to respond, right? But I mean, and your stuff might be even more interactive at like an opening or whatever, where you're being performed, whatever, there's an exchange or people could ask you questions or whatever. In theory, again, if people were asking questions and I was sitting there explaining it, I like that. But I don't want to have like this, I'm more comfortable being one step removed in my connection.
Well, I did have a creepy one where it was way too close, where I was blindfolded, and then I had all these things in front of me that people could do. But I didn't say anything, I just blindfolded myself and was sitting there. So then someone came up and put like lip balm on me, and that like freaked me out because I couldn't see them, I didn't know what was going on till something was there. So there's different interactions that then that should be more remote.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
you're trusting your audience.
I just mean interacting on a person-to-person level. Like, for a long time, maybe in my early 20s, I thought, like, man, mental health, I guess, was on my mind a lot as a teen, and then there was a huge gap where it wasn't for maybe, like, almost 10 years or 8 years until 2 years ago, when it's been on my mind again. But I thought, this concept to me about balance, being balanced, I'm like, oh, you know what, like, I'm not bipolar or anything. And then I realized that a lot of everything is so situational with me. I'm such at extremes with things, and like, I guess everything's situational for everyone for the most part or whatever, but like I feel balanced because of my extremes, so I never think of them being extreme, but they are. Because things like this too, like it's person-to-person connection is something that I really, really value, and those are those times where sometimes I've used them as negative coping mechanisms and like felt really stupid about spending time with somebody because it wasn't for the right reasons or it left me feeling crappy after. So the person-to-person connection is super important. I'm very introverted, I like to be by myself, I need that time, but I also, if you weren't here in Lethbridge with me, then like, I just, there's very, very few people I can have certain conversations with. So like I miss having those interactions on a more regular basis with different people and whatever else in like the community I would have had in Saskatoon. So I need that still. I need that person-to-person interaction. I like it if it's people I'm comfortable with. Some people like to meet new people. I don't like to meet new people or more than one person at once. Everything has to be on my terms all the time. So I want that control, and part of that is the anxiety and other things. Other people, it's like, oh, it's adventure time, let's just go. And I'm like, no, hold up, like, we can't just do that.
Yeah.
So, but the funny thing just with the work and like the exhibitions and the connection, like you are actively engaging person to person way more with your work. And it's very about body a lot of the times, and using your body to do this or that, or showing your body to like express this or that. And mine is like, here's my thing and it's over there. You go look at it and maybe I'd like to hear about it later, but I don't want to even be, it would still be, and part of it is like stage fright or talking in front of people. I don't want to like stand there and show my pieces like someone who worked at a museum would be like, and this piece here, like that's really uncomfortable to me to present it that way. Have a natural conversation or a sit down conversation I would like more, but
what about in the future, in like 5 or 6 years, when your work's like everywhere, and universities are asking you to come and speak about your work and your processes?
I would like that more because it's more of a controlled setting.
Yeah.
So again, that amount of control is like really important to me. With feeling comfortable, I don't. Again, with extremes, sometimes I adapt really well, but it's usually in like a unsavory way. Like I can problem solve really well, or if I was like doing illegal things in the past, like I could think on the fly and I could problem solve and I could get out of it as much as I could or whatever. So that kind of adapting and flexibility I can do, but it's not like, oh, I'm going to a wedding and there's a whole bunch of people. One, I don't want to be there, so I don't want to adapt. I don't, whatever, and I can't. That's a different thing of like I have to force myself. And I don't want to, and I don't like it, and maybe I can't put on a face in that scenario where it was like, oh, this cop's asking me something and I can just bold-faced lie to him, and that's easy. That's so easy for me, and always has been. But if it was just an exhibition here or anywhere else, and I had to be there for opening, I get nervous about it. I mean, it is still pretty structured. I mean, people can just come and loosely talk to you. I still feel awkward about it, but in an academic setting where it's way more structured, it's like, John's going to come talk, and then there'll be questions after. Or maybe questions during, but it's going to be like, yes, you sir. Like, I think I would like that a lot more. I'd have to get over the speaking part, but I've been doing that throughout my life slowly. Like, I had stage fright and whatever. Like, being in a band was not about, again, it's about an exchange, but it's a removed, I mean, it's more in person than like, oh, I put my artwork in a gallery and walk away, but it's just me screaming at people, really, and then after that people come up and talk to you sometimes, which half the time I can't even, like, I'm not even there after a show. Like, I feel like I'm just somewhere else, like disassociating, but not really. Like, I just feel very far removed from the reality of what's happening, and I'm on autopilot. I'm like, okay, I guess we got to take stuff down, and someone tries to talk to me, and I just feel like so disconnected from that. I'm just drained, I guess. I don't know, but that I had to get over. Teaching too, like just having to be up in front of students. It's like, yeah, you're an authority figure and you're older than them and all this other stuff, but that doesn't make a difference to me. Like, so I had to get over that. So I mean, there are situations that I can build those skills and work on, but.
So which are the ones that you actively would like to have one-on-one connections with, or do you necessarily crave that?
What do you mean?
Well, you're talking about even openings, you probably, if you had your druthers, would rather not be there, but it's standard, you have to be there. Then you're like, I don't really want to do, not so much, it's just it's harder. But, and then sort of at the high school, or I mean at the university, it's removed, I have control. So a lot of it, it's sort of like it's removed here and then I have control and I need control.
Yeah.
So how does that fit into the connection? Is it because you feel like what you need to express has gone out and that's your connection? Or is there a connection in there somewhere that you need? Does that not make sense? Like, I guess, I don't want to just keep talking, but I guess what I'm saying is, are there times where you don't need a controlled interaction when it comes to your art?
Oh, when it comes to art?
Or where you really, yeah. Because that's where you're talking, well, or anything that's creative, I guess, that you're talking about this legacy. When you're going to leave a legacy, maybe it doesn't include art necessarily.
The thing just like went from like here to here for me.
Sorry.
No,
Well,
don't apologize. I'm just trying to like wrap my head around it because I've been thinking about different examples all the time of like control and stuff like that, and it's like maybe that's another reason I'm like I don't want to go backpacking through Europe. Thank you very much. Like part of it has been safety and anxiety, but I think that anxiety has to do with the control too. Like how many new experiences and adventures am I going to have then? Like if I'm walking around Vancouver by myself for 10 hours, that I like more. Like, but I find way more safety there too. So I feel like I still need you to refine exactly what you're asking because I'm trying to.
A lot of we're talking about the need to connect through your art, right? Mm-hmm. And so one of the ways is you put it out there right away. But then when we're also talking about interacting, say, with that art, so then you gave examples of different ways. So with your music and how it's like with that, and it's still sort of in a way removed. I mean, you're literally connecting with that audience when you're performing. But then you're saying when it's done, like I don't really want to sit and chat to someone about it. And even when you're showing your visual art in an academic setting, it's like, okay, but I like being here. I don't necessarily want to. I'll interact, but more formal and on my terms,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's not sort of like as much splashing it out there. And I'm just saying, do you find a need to have that kind of interaction with your art, where you really, really want
like
a
response?
Connection? Yeah, and you really need the response or want the response, or you've enjoyed the response? Like what?
I want the response. So the things when you're talking about the like music and like to me that's the same thing as posting writing. Mm-hmm. Like I almost feel the same way about it. Is that I mean it's very different because like I said after the show being really drained and like emotionally there's been times where like if friends or family or like a partner or a potential interest came to the show, I had to prep them and be like after the show, like I'm just not gonna really be excited to see you. I probably won't even realize you're there. Like part of it is like we need to take down, we need to hurry.
Yeah.
But part of it is also for X amount of time afterwards, I don't feel available for anything like emotionally, even to just have a conversation. I think I'd be very off-putting talking to someone after a show, and I have to like put on the face if someone wants to like buy something or they have questions, which is very rare. But I mean to me that like same with the expression happened on stage, and again, it happened for me. I needed it, and it's different. It's way different than just recording it. It's way different than just jamming in the basement with people or whatever. And I need that too for different reasons. And it's still expression in that moment. It's still managing anxiety and being physical, whatever. But to me, it's the same thing as the writing. It's like, oh, I put it up online, and that's it. I want a response. With the music, or with performing, I put it out there, and I just want to walk away from it in a way. But like I said, they're very different because one is so physically draining and actively and emotionally draining, whereas the writing, I write it in private, I edit it, and I post it. When I post it, I'm not feeling what I was feeling when I wrote it. Yeah. Whereas the performance aspect, I feel that way, and then 2 seconds later, it's done, and it's like, hey, I gotta get off stage now.
And it might be different if you're doing your poetry at a poetry reading.
Yeah, see,
then
I wouldn't,
then
that's intimidating to me.
because it's performance again too, right?
Yeah, and that's something that I have to just get over again, but it's also, it's just me, and I'm so used to the band and whatever else. And I think it's also just, on a technical level, I would find it much more difficult to read poetry or prose because I don't have like, I don't have any instrumentation that's guiding what's next. It's hard for me to memorize it. I've done a spoken word piece as part of like introducing another song, and like there's like ambience and stuff in the background, but it's nothing like, oh, it's this many riffs and then like I don't know. So it'd be very difficult. And I think reading the poetry, I think it's more intimate too, is what it is.
Yeah,
because I also have to focus more.
Plus people, they're all basically sitting quiet looking at you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm trying to get back to your question and just like, I do want the response. I don't know how much I need it. Like, I would like to know that I reached a lot of people. And again, those terms are coming up, like reach. But like, I like to know that people saw it.
Is it quantity over quality?
No, not necessarily. I would rather quality over quantity of reaching people every time. But to me, quality would mean having a really great conversation, which almost never happens with strangers. If people had asked me questions, like I would like to be interviewed by a stranger, like that's fun for me, because again, I get to talk and I get to express and I get to work on my ideas. It's not about listening to them, I don't care.
I know.
Right? But, so I would like that. So if every time I posted a painting, I got only one person that was like, oh, this just hit me this certain way, I'd like to talk more about it, and we could share ideas, because I learn things from conversations. Half of it is because I just need a sounding board, but half of it is like talking with you or Jordan or like other friends. Like, I get good quality responses. I get challenged. I do like to be challenged. I challenge myself, but I am me. Like, I can't find the things outside of my own scope and throw them back at me really well.
Yeah.
So like, I like that because then I generate new ideas, or like, I never thought of that. How would I answer that? Now I'm forced to think about it. So I recognize that I need that for personal growth, artistic growth, and everything else. So that I definitely would rather the quality of that. However, I almost never get that. It's usually responses that are very shallow, even if they're just like, oh, this is great, I love it. That makes me happy because you like it, but it doesn't make me happier necessarily. Like, if 80 people liked one painting, and then another painting only got like 5 likes, I'm like, if people didn't like that one, but I don't care, I like it. And then be like, the one that got 80 doesn't make me want to do more of that necessarily. Part of me is like, if I'm working within that, I'm like, if it was saleable, like, so if it got bought within 30 seconds, then another one the same style did, because that's where that business side comes in. But going back again, like, if something got just likes, and no comments, no questions, no discussion, and it got 1,000 likes, it's not as rewarding to me as if someone just had one amazing question or conversation with me. So I definitely, in that aspect, like the quality more. The problem is I don't get it, so then I only rely on the quantity. I'm just relying on this thing got 5 likes and this thing got 30. I'm like, but I also know there's so many factors, the time of day, the algorithms people have, like whatever else, that I don't take much stock in that either. It's nice with social media when it's like, oh yeah, a lot of people responded to that. Well, you take 2 seconds to hit like, and it's, again, so many factors. I don't like something unless I like it. Where some people are like, oh, this is John's art, I just like everything. And I'm like, but, like, I wish he didn't, in a way, but, yeah, I want the response. I want to have the conversation. I want to connect. If someone either doesn't understand the piece, but they feel it enough to ask questions or to comment on it, then that it's still, to me, that's evidence. Okay, the response is evidence of connection. It's evidence that there was a quality of connection, whether it was a bad experience for them or a good one. Either one makes me happy. I prefer, well, I don't know if I prefer good ones. There have been 2 times I can think of right now where there was a negative connection, where someone just gravely misinterpreted the work and called me misogynist, and I got really upset about that. And I was like, you didn't read the artist statement, you didn't really, like, you completely just whatever, and that also it's not fun to be called a misogynist, so
Yeah.
at least not for me. So that was really upsetting, but I was like, they responded to it, they felt something enough, I wish they felt something different, and another time was at a different, it was almost the same body of work, or there was a lot of crossover with the theme, but it was in like a gallery space that was also a business, and it was sitting there, and somebody was at a front desk, and they saw it every day, and then really quickly someone from the space had said, we had to move that piece with another piece because it was like really affecting them negatively, just because it reminded them of their personal experiences. And I was like, okay, like that didn't really bother me. A little bit of it did, because I'm just like, just get over it. Like, you work in a space where there's art.
But in another way, what a compliment, like,
No,
to me,
it
that'd
is,
be the
yeah.
best compliment, really.
No, it was, like, it was both things, because part of me was
Yeah.
like, well, now what if it ruins the flow? Because it was at the very beginning, and it was a bigger piece, and now we gotta swap it out with something else. And I was like, it's annoying, because I should have more control, and just do what I want, and you just need to get over it. Or don't work in this space, like, that's that really aggressive, just like, part of me that's like, just get over it. But at the same time, yes, it was a compliment. They were interacting, or they felt something enough that it had to be moved. But that's the thing, like with the connection, even if it is one-sided, I still want to know that somebody was moved, or I think about it. Like I said, sometimes I think about my stuff just ending up in the garbage, or their kids think it's trash. If it gets passed down that long, and someone thinks it doesn't speak to them, like, then that is where it started. That's not legacy anymore. I will never know the reach I have unless someone tells me, so I like to have that. The other part of it is just thinking, like, oh, I don't know what will happen. You brought up the Van Gogh thing earlier, and like, people are at least buying my stuff, but there's way more, that's for so many reasons, not because of the quality of it, but because there's how many more people that get to see it. Social media, reach, population, where I live, all those things. So I'm glad that people get to have it, because that does mean something to me. I don't know what it's going to mean in 1 year, or 10, or 20, or 100, if that's going to be around. So that's why things like this come into play, because that could burn in a fire, this can't. And the way that the digital age is going, this can be accessible.
It's on a cloud or whatever you mean.
Well, yeah, or I mean, like, oh, it's posted, and I don't know what's going to happen with YouTube in 50 years, if it's going to be around, it's going to be another platform, or what, or I have no idea. But right now, this is more permanent than this.
Mm-hmm.
So, to me, books are still more permanent than paintings in a way, because you can reproduce, like, I don't like making prints. I mean, I would want to in a way, because then I get to reach more people with it, but then it becomes less special. Whereas a book to me is no less special. It's like, oh, you printed thousands, tens of thousands of copies of this book, and people bought it, or even if it is just digital, but that's a whole other... I like physical things, and I like the connection people have with physical things. So I would rather have someone have a physical book than just a digital copy of it, because I think you do get removed, like, emotionally from the thing too a lot of the times. But yeah, that's the legacy thing, is that going way back from the beginning, like, oh, you're not going to have kids, so is that a thing? And I was like, yeah, it is, because I'm not passing any of my stuff down onto my kids if I don't have any. But I also, even if I was going to have kids, with who I am or who I am now or whatever, I want to reach as many people as possible. I don't think this came from like neglect or anything of wanting to feel important. I don't ever use that term. I think people would interpret it that way anyway, so that's why I'm using it. But like, I want to inspire, which for some people probably seems the same thing, like that's really self-important, like who are you? But I want to be someone that gets my expressions out, because I believe my expressions can have, that they're worthy of connection, they're worthy of whatever, and that people can be inspired by them, whether it's looking at a painting and be like, oh, that makes me happy, or like, or the opposite of that, and it makes them feel something else, but at least it makes them feel something. Or if it's earlier works, a lot of the ones that were with figures and stuff, they were social commentary or something, so it makes someone think about something in a way. We're still inspiring thought instead of inspiring mood, or inspiring people to think about some bigger question. I don't remember who said it, and I have it in a quote book somewhere, but I'm probably going to misquote it a little bit, that like every book that's written is in response to the question, what should I do with my life? I think is what it was, and like, obviously not every author is thinking about that when they write something, but I found some truth in there anyway, of just like, everything that gets produced is like, I'm a living being and I'm creating something, and then why am I doing that? If everything goes back to intention and purpose, right? So consciously I was never thinking of legacy when I was making paintings at first, and I don't think about it when I'm making a painting in the middle of the act. It's not about legacy usually. I can't think of a piece right now that was like, this is about legacy, but it all relates to it being a thing I created, and I want people to respond to that thing. I don't want anything that I create to be just for myself.
It's funny because for me, like I didn't really, because I don't like talking on the phone. Really, my favorite thing is to stay home, and like if I could just work from home and stay, like I'm fine not seeing people for quite a while. Like it's not, I don't have that, like I need to go see people, I need to do this. However, my art has always been political, so it's always about trying to reach people. It's about trying to cause change, societal change, or at least challenge it.
Well, inspire thought.
And yeah, and trying to do that, but it's such a like connected, like it's so meaning to be connected with people, and that's why I say often it's performance, and it's all those things. So there, I'm really connecting and talking and da. And I think the thing that's been nice for me with the painting is it's not, like it's a really weird thing. I think it's why it took me a while to get into it too, because it's not about that. I'm with you and having these great conversations, but even when I'm alone in the studio, it's just kind of this really great thing where I don't have to converse with anything. I'm not expecting anyone to look at it, like it, buy it, anything. It's just this total creative space for me.
But isn't that what writing is for you, or has been? Because haven't you been just writing consistently forever?
Not consistently. I had like, actually before I started writing back here, before I started connecting it back. So I probably had a good couple of years where I wasn't doing anything. But yes, it's always been consistent. I've done poetry readings quite a bit, and I don't mind doing them. I can get up and I can, but if I have to go and give a speech, when I go to my poetry reading, I'm allowed to, or I'm able to talk loud. I have some of the most personal shit ever, and I'm fine sharing it. But
okay, so you don't create it with that in mind. So I'm just trying to compare the writing to the arts, or like the visual pieces, because you said that this is kind of like the first time you've done it, and I think the writing is the first time you've done it. I don't see a difference, because you're not thinking about posting your writing, and maybe you share more of it now than you did a year ago or two, if you have like a line or two there, or sometimes I'm taking pictures of your little prompt.
I was just writing how when we left off that sometimes I stop myself from writing anything that, or everything that I might want to write, and when I was writing about that, I realized that's part of my legacy then, right? So there's a tiny bit that must be like in the back of my mind, always about legacy, because it's thinking about other people reading it. So part of it is in the future, and what I want people to think about me or not think about me.
Yeah.
The weird thing is though, when I'm writing a story that's you know, stream of consciousness, I can end up I can't remember what the word is, censoring myself. Whenever I'm doing magic realism, like stories or poems that I'm consciously in that, then I write whatever I want. I guess because then it could be a story that's made up in my head, right?
Yeah.
So then I'm not conscious of anything, it's just like writing. But if it's something I'm consciously writing, or if it's more journal, I guess, then I'm very conscious and will censor things that I think either I sound dumb
Really?
or that I feel are bad that I don't want anyone to know about me.
And see, that part I get. The sounding dumb thing I don't get at all.
It's my biggest, one of my biggest fears maybe, because that's why even with my painting, putting my painting out there, I'm scared someone's just going to go like, that is horrendous.
Okay, but if you're not sharing the writing, then why are you afraid of sounding dumb?
Because I do share it, and because I think the legacy thing is that someone will find it one day, like you're talking about, right? And so it's like, I don't think as much as immediately, but yeah, thinking someone will find it someday and then think, oh, she was a daft bunny here. I thought she might have something interesting to say.
I guess, I don't know, yeah, so what we were saying before, that we got into just a little bit, well, I don't know, to go back to the point that you started with, the thing that like, one of the things I was going to get to was, I've never thought about like, oh, I'm going to sound dumb. So like, I've got all this writing from when I was 14, and I've looked on some of that in the past year, and I've been like, whoa, this is the cringiest stuff ever, this is horrible, I could never publish any of this.
Yeah.
But a part of me still hopes that like someone would find it someday. Like if I have like in a physical book, or if I put it online somewhere, which I'm kind of hesitant to do, because originally when I was going to have a blog, which I still would like to do at some point, I was going to have all these archives, right? And I'm hoping that obviously someone will recognize, oh, you did this when you were like 14, that's why it's so cringy, but you could see the evolution. Now, it would take someone to be really, really interested in me as a person to really go through all that trouble, right? So I'm not thinking that's necessarily going to happen. The other thing was that I haven't really thought about the feeling someone's going to think I'm dumb. I just assumed whoever was reading it would know the context enough to take that into consideration while they're reading it. So that has never been an issue for me. But censoring myself as I write, because like in my early and mid-20s there have been a couple times like I'm going to try to write a journal, I think that would be cool, and then I am so aware of the fact that I can't write this down because someone would find out. So like
right, like confessional type things.
Well, yeah, and like some of it I can, but some of it is just like, if I was, and now I got to make that decision of what I say and how revealing I get there. If I was lying, and
there were consequences to your.
Yeah, exactly. There's consequences to revealing the truth, even if it's like. I guess that's the thing. The journal has never been a thing that I thought of as just for me either. Because early on, even when it was like, my kids might find this one day, like, I've always thought someone else might read this, someone else might read this. And like, even if I'm not giving it to someone else to read, it was like, man, my kids stumbling upon it, if I had kids, would be something that I wouldn't mind as much. Or if a stranger stumbled upon it, I wouldn't care at all. I would reveal everything. But if it was a partner, and I had like lied to that partner, or I didn't want them to know this deeper secret or something I have, because maybe they'll just misconstrue it, or just like, or maybe I was being critical of them or something, and I just was writing that down, and then like I think we have those thoughts in our minds all the time.
I think everybody, like anyone who writes, if they say they don't think of someone else reading down, I think they're lying, because you always know there's a chance.
Yeah, because it's here now. It's not just here.
Yeah.
But on the note too, like I would like to write a memoir that is like everything, like absolutely everything. But I wouldn't. But the only time to do that, like I don't know when it would be. It would be.
Why? Like I'm just.
Because go ahead.
No, like I'm just curious, because this is obviously a legacy is wanting someone to know how you lived and what you did.
Yeah.
And yeah, well that's.
I've always wanted, I feel like I could write more than one. Like right now I've got enough, I feel like I have enough stuff that I would want to say or tell stories, etc., that I could write like a full length, like legit memoir right now. And the longer I wait, the less I'm going to remember, or like memory's just a funny thing to begin with, right? So, but I
don't think that's usual. That's just why I'm saying it. I don't think it's very usual for people to want to write down everything in their life. I mean, most people, if you ask them if they want to write a memoir, they would say no, right? Or their life wasn't interesting enough, or different things like that. So I think it's interesting. Like you really do, when you talk about legacy, you really do mean, you don't just mean even your art, you mean your life.
Yeah.
Like when you leave, this is your life.
Yeah.
So you literally mean a legacy of you.
Yeah.
Like literally of you.
Well, and that's the thing, and that's maybe why I don't translate that to having a kid, because the kid, you don't control that kid. That kid is not your legacy. It's just DNA. I mean, there's an opportunity to imprint your belief systems or your thoughts or whatever. There's this possibility of passing down good qualities, teaching, guiding, but ultimately that child is going to grow up or whatever. They're going to make their own choices. So like that, and then it's not going to be a reflection of you at all. I don't think of nature. There's a certain amount of nurture, and sometimes nurture completely gets ignored by someone's nature. So it's not a reflection on that. Like, I don't know if, you know, Ted Bundy's mom was like, you know, if or you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Oh, maybe that is a reflection of them, and I don't know. So I just think that there's no control there, and it's not like, yeah, that's not my legacy. That my kid is not my legacy. If the kid ended up being amazing, it still wouldn't be me being amazing. And then the kid might say, you know, I got to thank my dad for this. He was the best. He inspired me to do whatever, and I saved the world or whatever. Like, I created this anti-vaccine, like, or I don't, you know.
So what if someone wanted to do a biography on you?
I would let them, but I mean.
So like that means lots of times the biography is facts that are found there, a little bit of you. Giving information if you want, but then there's a huge part that is asking other people about who you are.
Yeah.
So now it's like something you can't control again. So is that interesting?
I would still do it. There's two things with that. One is that if someone is smart enough, then they know that that is not my lens, right? Like you just said, they'd ask other people about me, which gives a fuller picture, but it's also a distorted picture of how I see myself, and it's supposed to be more. It's supposed to be more accurate because it's seen from everyone else's interactions with me too. So they could say, yeah, John was a real piece of garbage to me, whatever. And I might have resolved that with myself and decided I learned from that, maybe I was garbage and I moved on, but I didn't say sorry to that person or something, so they don't include that in their story. But that did affect me, and I did something with that and was a better person after or something. But I think if the person is smart enough, they'll realize, yeah, this is not an autobiography, and even sometimes autobiographies are with ex-author or whatever, right? Because the person has a story to tell, but they're not good at telling a story in a written form, so they need help. So I think if someone was smart enough, they would know that whoever was compiling this information and then writing it is not me, therefore it's not how I want to be presented exactly, that it may not be, and I'm not, like, I shouldn't say that wouldn't be flattering, because the things I would write about myself are not flattering. But that's because it would just be everything. It has to just be all, and not, like, or there's no way it's everything ever, because I would focus on what I think is important, and what's unimportant might be important to someone else, etc. So, but I'm trying to say I wouldn't shy away from the dark parts. Actually, those are the parts that are most interesting to me. So yes, I would still like someone, if they wanted to write a biography, I would do that. I would be a part of it. I wouldn't be that person who's like, no, I'm not contributing. But I would much rather, and like if there's only going to be one, then I would want to write it. So like the memoir, like I would want to write if there's only going to be one. If there's multiple out there, then whatever, that's fine. And again, I would just hope that the audience is smart enough to recognize cause I've read multiple biographies on one person because different lenses, right? Or different areas of their life and if they contributed or not. But I don't know, I want to, like you brought up, like it's not a legacy of my work, it's like, or my art or whatever, it's my life. And that's what I don't know, I want to tell that story or express that story or whatever it is, like that's what I want. I don't know all the reasons why that's there. I mean, part of it has been there before I decided not to have kids, I think. So it's just like, that's what I was going to say. I'm glad I remembered. That I like secrets and I hate secrets. I mean, my own. Like I mentioned earlier, it's easy for me to lie. It's very easy in the moment. I might have some conflict with it later on, and I might be able to resolve that conflict and just be like, no, that's fine. Like, that person, not that I deserve to get lied to, but I don't feel bad about it or something. Other times I'm like, I wish I didn't do that. And then I might come clean later and tell the truth. But part of me doesn't like, hey, lying is a necessity for me sometimes, or it feels like it's a necessity. It's not, like if I could, it's a necessity to get what I want, to manipulate the situation. So if I can have what I want without lying, there's no reason to lie. I don't think I'm just that compulsive liar who's just like, yeah, I had a Ferrari once, and like I don't just make up stories.
Yeah.
Like it's because I need to hide something in order to get what I want.
Because you want to look the best possible.
I don't think that's what it is.
I think it is, and I think even like if you, I don't know, I think it is. I think because again you're wanting to control how you're seen. So sometimes if you don't tell a lie, then either you're going to be seen as hurting that person and you don't want to hurt the person, or you think you're not going to be seen or is respected as much, or like I think it is so that you can control how people think of you. Otherwise you come clean.
Well, that's, sometimes it is, but not all the time.
I'm not saying it's all the time.
Oh.
But I'm saying I think that it kind of is related to that. Like why else would it be? I mean, it's either because you want to get away with something, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, of course.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's, you're still caring about what someone else thinks, but you're still kind of trying to control that.
Yeah,
So,
but I still carry that control. I have to be, if it's someone that, okay, if I've lied to someone that I was really close to and I never told them the truth, years later, it's not bothering me, it's not in my mind all the time, but I still know, if I think about that person, I'm like, oh yeah, I still know that they think something else happened that didn't happen, or that they have questions about it and I've never admitted it to them or whatever, and that doesn't necessarily bother me on a day-to-day basis. But if I lie to someone that I talk to almost daily or have a very close relationship with at this point, then like I either have to resolve it or, I mean I have to resolve it one way or the other, right? So it still weighs on me and I still think about it to a degree. And until I resolve it. Resolving it either telling the truth or recognizing that I put it to rest and I'm okay with that lie and it's fine and there's no conflict with me. Oh, I had a place I was going to go with that, but I think, like, oh yeah, just wanting to like tell everything in a way, like, again, to me the lie is out of necessity, the manipulation of truth or whatever is out of necessity, or sometimes telling the truth is a manipulation too, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just like, because I'm choosing to tell you something I didn't need to tell you for a purpose, and yes, it's true. But all of that is to get whatever it is that I'm wanting out of that interaction with somebody. So that has that function and that purpose, but in the scheme of wanting to express myself, I would never want to express a lie. I don't, in my paintings or in my writing, would ever express like, yeah, this is who I am, look at me, like I'm this like holier than thou person. One, because I don't find that interesting. I don't find it real either. I'm way more interested in the secrets that people keep and like, or the darkness or like the conflict, right? You don't have a story without conflict. But like someone, it's not about like all these great things that happen. It's really, well, one, you need conflict to overcome to even have anything great to accomplish. So for some people it's like a rags to riches story, but you know, I think, like I just have that problem with secrets, that it's easy to have them, but I don't like having them. I shouldn't say secrets, I should say lies. I like having secrets, I like having little things that are just for me sometimes. I think everybody does, and whoever says they don't is a liar. And like, you could have a spouse that you are deeply in love with and whatever else for decades, and you don't share every single thought that comes out of your head. You just don't. So you have secrets, you have things you choose not to say, for whatever reason it is, and it's not a big deal, it's human and we all do it. So I like having these little secrets. They're not malicious little things either, but I just, whatever, have private thoughts, and I like having those private thoughts, and like, there's there. But I also, in a memoir type scenario, would want to say all these interesting parts, which are things like, you said consequence earlier, and that's the thing. I wouldn't be able to share those things until I felt I couldn't be hurt by the consequences. So either the thing I'm talking about in that person I don't interact with anymore anyway, or it's not going to affect me negatively.
What if it would affect them?
I don't care. I mean, well, it depends on what it is. Like, I just don't think, for what I'm thinking of in my head, I'm not thinking about how it'll affect them. I'm thinking about what I want to express, and that's it. It's very, again, self-serving. That's why if I were to write a memoir, it's not because it's going to uplift someone else or tear them down either. It's because it's not about defaming someone else or whatever. I'm expressing myself. And if that affects somebody else negatively, it's not even, I didn't even think of it until you asked it. And then on my immediate response is I don't care. I mean, if it was gonna like, I don't know people that are influential or important enough that it would be like, oh, it's gonna like tear them down and now they have to leave office and their life is ruined. You know what I mean? Like, because then I would have to consider those things. That's not what's happening in my life with the people I know right now or whatever. So the stories that I would be writing, I also don't think I would be negatively affecting anyone but myself with those. Like, I think the things I would be writing about aren't about how people were crappy to me. When I'm thinking about the negative things, it's more about how I was crappy to people or how I manipulated this and how I did that and why. Because I think the why is what's important. It's not because it's like fun gossip. It's always, okay, but why did you do that? That's what's interesting to me. I just want a fuller picture.
Like, I'm trying to figure out why you would like to write your memoir. Like, that's really different, right? Like, that's kind of, unless maybe I don't know, but like, I think wanting to put it out there, like, here is my life, here's what I did, because you're someone who you recognize as very artistic and has that going on. And so by sharing that, you're sharing a part of a process.
I don't want to say that everyone has a story to tell. I don't know, it's not that I don't want to say it because it's not true, but I roll my eyes when someone says that, because I'm like, no, not everyone has a story to tell. Some people are garbage people. I mean, garbage people can have a great story to tell too, but I mean like garbage in the sense that you're a waste and you don't do anything except follow the crowd, and your thoughts are not valuable because they're not unique, because you don't think at all. You're like on autopilot. Like, that's not interesting to me. I don't think that person has anything to tell, because I think if you have a story to tell, it means that it's either a story no one's told before or it's presented in a different way, which,
well,
I mean,
if it's presented by them, though, that's different than how you're going to see them. And so there might be a story to tell there, because there might actually be something going on that you never get to see.
Well, that's the thing. Usually, okay, so if we both had the same exact experience at the same moment, or like right now, what we're doing right now, let's just say that we went and wrote about it, which I don't think I would do, but I mean, like, we're experiencing this event, no one else is around, you write about it, I write about it, completely different. I think we'll probably touch on some similar key points, but the expression is different. I would find them both interesting to read. But some people don't, their quality of thought is not up to a standard where I would find them having anything to say. Either because they can't present it in a way that's interesting, but a lot of the time it's just because they don't think about things in a way that's interesting. They're not even reflecting at all. So I don't think everyone has a story to tell, because even if a bunch of crap happened to them, okay, the story is technically there, I guess they just can't tell it. So that's why I get torn, because I'm like, I think everyone at a certain amount of life has had some real stuff happen to them, and that they could talk about, and it would be interesting to get insight into them. The problem is that they can't intelligently express it or even think of it as something that would be worthy of telling. So that's just the problem, where I'm like, everyone has a story to tell. Like, I would just never want to say that, just because of how it's been said before and the feeling I get when I hear people say it. But I do think that genuinely...
Why do you feel you have a story to tell?
Because I'm the best.
No, seriously.
No, I know.
Like, I mean, and like, because obviously you've thought about it, and I know that lots of things have, but like, in just a little sense, what gives you the, like, you know what, I do have a story to tell, I need to write it down?
I don't know when I thought that at all. I mean, like I said, when I was writing the stuff that was very, very personal, when I was like 14 or 15, and these poems, I just was like, oh, there's this thing, and I could post them, cool. Mm-hmm. That's the connection thing. It wasn't about a story to tell then.
Yeah.
So I don't know when that happened. It was either because there was enough positive feedback, or it was just like, if I were to have like a conversation one-on-one with someone, and I felt they always walked away not getting anything from the conversation, then I wouldn't have any feedback to tell me that I had something to say that was worth hearing.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know what I would do in that scenario, but I've had enough positive feedback that, and again, I don't know if this is why I feel like I have a story to tell. Back to the word important, like,
Maybe it's not a real question.
or worthy, or, no, it's not that it's, I don't know, like, it's making me think about stuff, I just don't know exactly, like, I guess it's because I wasn't thinking at first, this is important, I just thought, I'm expressing myself, it's just, it was very natural, very quickly, so I just did it, and it was in my nature to do, and again, maybe that, because to me, that comes from the connection, because partially, I think, being like the only child for that many years with a single parent who was at work, I can't think of like how I interacted and played and connected with other people, but those connections to me, what I'm looking at, those are just different connections, but the point is that like, I think, again, that just, yeah, it was just that whole connection thing of just reaching out to connect, and it wasn't necessarily, I'm important and I have a story to tell. I don't know when that transition happened, because it did at some point. I mean, it's still about connecting, but it's also about like, I want to reach people with this thing that they can appreciate, and it's still very tied to connection, I guess, because it's like they are connecting with the piece, and the piece is an extension of me. So they are connecting with me. Or they're appreciating me. And like, I think earlier, I said the word neglect like much earlier on, and being like, I don't think it's about being neglected, because I don't think that was the case. It was just the natural circumstances that happened. It was like, mom has to work, and I'm just hanging out, and whatever. But I just don't, I didn't have cousins, because they were all in Chile. I didn't have any extended family, I didn't have a sibling, and when I did have a sibling, like, I often will just say my sister rather than my half-sister. I have two half-sisters, but I'm a lot closer to one than the other. And she was born when I was like 13, so like again, I moved out by the time she was 5, we didn't really connect.
Yeah.
I don't know when the thing came, like again, the word, if it's important, or if it's, what was the other word? I don't remember what the other word was, but where I had something to say, like, 'cause I'm like, yeah, everyone has something to say, I just want to say it. I just really want to say it. I don't know really how to not say it sometimes. Like, I would feel maybe too much in my head too. Like, I would feel weird if I didn't just get stuff out. Like, I don't know. That's tough. I don't know how to answer that in a concise way, or just like...
Well, I imagine it's something that will come as you go along with, like, the more you talk about things, the more you hear yourself, like, talk about things, and you're gonna be like, oh yeah, that's what I mean about this, right? Like, the more you talk about things, the more you'll have to say about things, or the more questions you'll have.
Yeah, definitely more questions I'll have, for sure.
Which maybe is the best anyway.
Yeah.
But.